Hello campers, this is the Suburban Camper. It's cold outside, but that does not mean camping season is over. There are still rivers to fish and mountains to ski, so why not camp close to the action? Now I must admit the title of this video is a bit misleading, so with that in mind I will get right to the point, which is an electric blanket is the best way to stay warm while camping in cold weather. So, the best electric blanket is simply any safe and reliable electric blanket. Here is the one I use. It is made by RoadPro. I will put a link to it in the description. Electric blankets are simple devices performing a basic job, so there is no need for them to be complicated, and this one proves this point. There are no switches or heat level controls. Just plug it in and the heat flows. This simple design also means there are fewer points of potential failure, which is very important when you're relying on this device to stay warm. So, now that you know the best electric blanket is any safe and reliable electric blanket, feel free to stop watching. But if you want to understand why I believe it is the best option for staying warm while winter camping, and exactly how I utilize my electric blanket, please stay tuned. The first reason I believe an electric blanket is the best option is based on my approach of focusing on keeping my body warm rather than warming the camping space. The reason I chose this approach is the fact that warming the camping space is more complicated and dangerous. After a bad experience with a propane heater, I decided I would never utilize a device burning fuel inside my camping space. Now, when I have access to power hookups, I will utilize an electric space heater, but only when I am awake. I use it to warm up the inside of my Suburban before I go to sleep and in the morning to help me get out of my sleeping bag. But either with or without power hookups, while I'm sleeping, the only device I utilize to stay warm is my electric blanket. I know there are options which operate outside of the vehicle, such as diesel heaters, but they can be expensive, noisy, and complicated. Also, I already carry two fuel sources, white gas and propane, so I don't really want to add a third one to the mix, especially diesel, which creates a big stinky mess when spilled. The second reason I believe an electric blanket is the best option is the fact that it is a simple, reliable, and affordable solution. The concept of transforming electricity into heat via insulated wire or a heating element is a simple concept that has been around forever, which makes it a reliable solution. In terms of affordability, there are plenty of options under $50. The foundation of my electric blanket system is my Deep Cycle battery, which is a Renogy 100 amp hour AGM battery. I have been utilizing this battery for about 3 years and it has served me well. The key is to keep a charge on it while it is in storage, and I use a 4 amp battery charger for this purpose. I have the battery grounded to the frame of my Suburban to protect against electrical shock hazards. It also helps keep the battery secure, but I'm not counting on that in the event of an accident, so I always utilize my cargo net while traveling. My electric blanket runs at 12 volts and draws 4.6 amps. You simply plug it into an automobile auxiliary power outlet, also known as the cigarette lighter outlet. I have one of these outlets always connected to my battery, and if needed, I can power a second blanket with a second outlet by connecting these clips to the battery. I ran both the power plugs through a hole in the side of my battery bin, which enables me to keep a lid on the bin. My experience tells me my battery will easily power one electric blanket for 2 nights, and it will likely power it for 3 nights, but I prefer not to push my luck, so I try and put a charge on the battery after 2 nights. Typically, I will do this when I'm traveling. Before I take off, I plug my inverter into a vehicle power outlet and then plug the charger into it. There are inherent risks utilizing a Deep Cycle battery and an electric blanket, which includes electrical shock, fire caused by a short circuit, and burns if the blanket gets too hot. With that in mind, please be sure to read and follow the instructions and warnings for your electric blanket and battery. In addition to utilizing ground as a low-resistance pathway to protect against electrical faults, you also need to utilize fuses. My blanket has a built-in 10-amp glass fuse, which can be accessed by unscrewing the tip of the plug. My power plugs came with an inline 15-amp fuse, and I also utilized a 30-amp inline fuse on the battery for extra protection. Just be sure to carry extra fuses. My experience tells me my 20-degree sleeping bag in conjunction with a couple blankets keeps me warm down to 32 degrees. So if the temperature is currently at or below freezing, or if there is any chance it will get there over the course of the night, then I get my electric blanket ready to go. I run the electric blanket power cord along the floor on the zipper side of my sleeping bag. Then I fold the blanket lengthwise and place it on top of my sleeping bag with the power cord connection facing up on the zipper side. I do not plug the blanket in until I'm ready to get inside my sleeping bag because it needs both your body heat and insulation to perform well in extreme cold. An electric blanket cannot overcome wide temperature variations, so it's pointless and a waste of energy to plug it in while it is in a cold space or to use it on your body outside of your sleeping bag. You can preheat the blanket a bit inside your sleeping bag, but this should be limited to just a few minutes. The bottom line is both you and your electric blanket need to stay inside your sleeping bag to stay warm. This light lets me know the blanket is connected to power. I recommend passing the plug through a knot in the cord to prevent the plug from being pulled out of the receptacle. Also, it is best to have the female end of the plug pointing down to help it stay connected, and you also need to be able to see the power light over the course of the night to make sure it is still working. So, I utilize a clip to keep the plug in an elevated vertical position with the light pointed towards me. Trust me, there will be times on extremely cold nights when you will wonder whether the blanket is working, and with this trick, you won't have to get out of your sleeping bag to find out. Now, I am ready to get inside my sleeping bag. At this point, I will more than likely still have most of my clothes and warm layers on. Once inside, I place the electric blanket on the top of my body, starting at my lower chest and overlapping it over my feet. The blanket covers my sides, but I do not wrap the blanket around my body, as this will reduce the insulation and increase the surface area of the blanket, resulting in more heat loss. Now, I act like a mummy until I warm up. Then, I start shedding layers with the goal of getting down to my long johns, socks, and a stocking cap, and then I fall asleep. And then, after a while, I get hot. When that happens, I slide the electric blanket to the non-zipper side of my bag, but keep my feet covered. If I feel the cold creeping in, I will put the blanket back on top of my body. Typically, this process continues throughout the night, but I will take this over trying to sleep when I am cold. My experience tells me my electric blanket will keep me warm down to an outside temperature of 0. On the night I experienced this, I felt the cold creeping in, but it was only for a couple of hours as it quickly warmed up into the 20s, so I don't know whether I would have made it through the night if it stayed at 0. One winter, I had grand plans to camp my way through several Canadian ski resorts, and I made it to a couple of them, but then the temperature got well below 0, and I knew that would present too many challenges, such as all the food in the cooler freezing solid and my stove not able to operate, so I ended up staying in hotels for the rest of the trip. Everybody's tolerance levels and ideal temperature will be different, so I recommend utilizing an indoor-outdoor thermometer to help establish your limits and best practices. I utilize this ThermPro thermometer, which features a rechargeable sensor that I place outside, along with a battery-powered display with nice big numbers showing the outdoor and indoor temperature. I keep the display in a place where I can easily see it while sleeping, which has enabled me to realize sometimes the inside space can be a bit warmer than outside. Here's an example where it is 16 degrees outside and 23 degrees inside, which makes a difference. I also utilize this atomic clock, which has a built-in thermometer to monitor the indoor temperature in the event I do not install my ThermPro device. So, how warm does it get inside the sleeping bag? Well, I carry a multimeter to monitor the charge on my battery, and one day I realized it has a temperature sensor, so I used it to find out. Inside my Suburban, it is anywhere from 27 to 32 degrees, and inside the sleeping bag, it is a nice and toasty 81 degrees. Ah, yes. I hope this video helps you enjoy winter camping. If you learned something, please subscribe. Thank you very much.